It was one of those late afternoons when the school corridors were empty and only the echo of our footsteps followed us. We had stayed after classes to help organize some decorations for the upcoming school fair. Most teachers had already left, except for Mr. Alves, the janitor, who waved at us from the end of the hall and muttered something we didn't catch. It started as a simple dare. "Go check the storage room on the 3rd floor," one of my friends whispered. We all laughed, thinking it was harmless. Until we saw the door, locker 313. The paint was peeling, the lock rusted, and there was something about it that made the hairs on my neck stand up. We opened it. Inside it was dark, colder than the hallway, and the faint smell of something old lingered in the air. At first, nothing happened, just shelves full of dusty books and forgotten supplies. But then, I noticed a notebook on the top shelf, its pages yellowed, covered in handwriting. Names, dates, small messages like, "Help me, I'm still here." I read one aloud, and immediately the temperature dropped. A whisper, barely audible, echoed from the corner of the room. "Don't leave." We froze. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. We tried to push it, pull it, but it wouldn't budge. Then the whispers got louder. Voices of children, students we didn't know, all repeating our names, all pleading, all warning us not to stay. I turned to my friends, but their faces were pale, terrified, and the shadows on the walls seemed alive. Hours must have passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost all meaning. When the door finally opened, we ran. We never looked back. I don't know what happened that day. I don't know if the locker 313, or something inside it, was real. But sometimes when I walk past that hall, I swear I can hear whispers calling my name, and I can't shake the feeling that someone or something is still trapped inside, waiting for the next person to open the door. It was almost midnight when we realized we were completely alone in the school. We had stayed after hours to help organize a student event, and the last teacher still wandering the hallways had given us a rushed, "See you tomorrow." We thought it would be easy. After all, we had locked up before, but this time something felt off. At first, there was only silence. The corridor was dark, lit only by weak, flickering lights. The walls seemed to stretch longer than usual, shadows bending in strange ways. Then, faintly at first, we heard the school's PA system, and there was no one in the auditorium. A voice called my name, then another called Clara's, and finally Julia's. But these voices weren't human. They were old, distant, as if they were echoing from another time. Shadows seemed to twist and flicker along the walls as we froze in place. We exchanged nervous glances, our footsteps suddenly feeling heavy. The echo of every small sound, a squeaky floorboard, a distant rattling door, seemed amplified in the silent hallways. We moved toward the sound control room, each step slower than the last, hearts pounding. When we reached the room, the recordings began to play on their own. Each track grew louder, layering over the others, overlapping in a chaotic but oddly rhythmic pattern. It was impossible to turn them off. The buttons on the console glowed faintly, almost as if they were alive. Then, the principal appeared out of nowhere, her face pale and eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. She demanded to see the logs, and when she checked them, what she revealed froze us to the core. The voices belonged to students who had died in the 1999 fire. and these recordings were from the very day the tragedy occurred. We tried every exit, every emergency door. All were locked. The voices continued to call our names, whispering phrases that should never have been spoken. And then we noticed it. Subtle movements in the corners of our vision, shadows that didn't match the flickering lights, and the faint impression of being watched from somewhere unseen. Time became distorted. Minutes felt like hours. At one point, Clara swore she saw a hand reaching out from the wall, only for it to vanish when we looked directly. Julia swore the corridor behind us had grown longer, twisting like a maze. Each new sound, a creaking floorboard, a distant bang, the barely audible hiss of the PA system, made our breaths shallower, our nerves taut. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the voices quieted, leaving only the soft hum of the old speakers and the occasional flicker of the lights. We eventually found a side exit door slightly ajar and fled into the night, hearts still racing. I can never hear the PA system without feeling that cold shiver run down my spine. And to this day, whenever I walk past the school, I remember those names still echoing through the empty corridors, the shadows twisting just out of sight, and the unmistakable feeling that someone, or something, is still watching. It wasn't a ghost. In the third-floor girls' bathroom, the legend wasn't about a bloody phantom or a face in the stalls. It was something quieter. It was the lag. The rumor was simple. If you moved too fast, the reflection in the main mirror couldn't keep up. It would stutter, just a fraction of a second behind you. A glitch in the silver. Most girls thought it was just a trick of the old fluorescent lights, which buzzed like a dying insect day and night. I never believed it. I used the second-floor bathroom near my locker. It was cleaner. But on Tuesday, the second-floor stalls were all taped off, a flooded pipe. I had a history midterm in 5 minutes, and my stomach was a knot of anxiety. I needed a second to breathe, to splash water on my face. So, I took the stairs to the third floor. The hallway was empty, muffled by the sound of lectures happening behind closed doors. The buzz of the lights was louder here, almost oppressive. I pushed open the heavy metal door to the bathroom. It was cold, instantly, noticeably colder than the hall. The air smelled sharp like old industrial cleaner and something metallic, like rust. The mint green tiles were faded and cracked. I stood in front of the sink. The mirror was huge, wall to wall, its edges spotted with dark patches, like a creeping sickness. I looked up, meeting my own eyes. Anna, stressed, pale, dark circles under her eyes. I did the test. I couldn't help it. I raised my right hand. My reflection raised its right hand. I shook my head, fast. The reflection kept up perfectly. I forced a nervous smile. The reflection mirrored it. No lag. I let out a shaky breath, feeling stupid. Just a story. I turned on the faucet. The pipes groaned, spitting out icy water. I cupped my hands, splashing the cold on my face, the shock of it making my heart jump. I grabbed a rough paper towel, dried my skin, and looked up one last time, ready to leave. I thought about smiling. Just the fleeting, mental impulse. In the mirror, my reflection smiled. It wasn't my nervous twitch. It was a full, wide, ecstatic grin. It was a smile that stretched too far, showing every tooth. A smile of pure, terrifying joy. I froze. My own mouth was a flat line of shock. My hands were still holding the damp paper towel. The reflection held the smile for 1 second. 2. Its eyes were bright, crinkling at the corners. Then, like a switch being flipped, the smile vanished. The reflection's mouth snapped back to match mine. But its eyes were now wide, not with joy, with absolute, paralyzing terror. I didn't scream. I just dropped the paper towel and ran. I fled the bathroom, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, and didn't stop until I skidded into my desk in history class, just as the final bell rang. "Cutting it close, Anna," Mr. Harrison said. His voice was smooth, charismatic. "Glad you could make it." Mr. Harrison was new. He was the teacher everyone loved. Young, handsome, made the French Revolution sound like an action movie. As he handed out the midterms, he gave me a reassuring grin. It was just a little too wide. I failed the test. I couldn't focus. All I could see was that smile. I tried to tell my best friend Maya at lunch. "The lag?" she said, picking at her salad. "And it smiled at you?" "Anna, you've been mainlining coffee for 3 days. You're stressed. You're hallucinating." She was probably right. Sleep deprivation, midterm anxiety. It was logical, but I couldn't shake the image. It wasn't the smile that scared me the most. It was the panic in its eyes after. It wasn't my panic. It was hers. For the next 2 days, I avoided that bathroom. I avoided all mirrors when I could. I felt watched. On Friday, I was in the library trying to make up for my failed test. Mr. Harrison was the after-school monitor. The library was quiet, just the sound of pages turning and the soft click-clack of keyboards. "Working hard, I see." I jumped. Mr. Harrison was standing right next to my table. I hadn't heard him approach. "Oh, hi, Mr. Harrison." "Yeah, just extra credit." He smiled, that same easy, charming smile. "I heard you were a little shaken after the midterm. Just wanted to make sure you were feeling okay." "I'm fine," I said, my voice too quick. "Just stressed." "I get it," he said, leaning against the bookshelf. His eyes scanned me. "That's a nice sweater. Blue is a great color on you." A cold, sharp feeling pricked my stomach. "Thanks." He nodded, then walked away, his footsteps perfectly silent on the carpeted floor. I waited until he had rounded the corner. Then I looked down. I was wearing a gray hoodie, faded, old, with my school's logo on it, not a blue sweater. My heart felt like it had stopped. I wasn't just tired. I was going insane. I needed proof. I needed to see it again. I grabbed my bag and walked, my legs feeling like cement. I ignored the second-floor bathroom. I went straight to the third floor. The buzzing of the lights seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. I pushed the door open. The cold hit me like a sheet. I stood in front of the sink, my knuckles white as I gripped the porcelain edge. I was shaking. "Please," I whispered to the empty room. "Please be normal." I looked up. My reflection was already there, waiting. She looked frantic. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs, I raised my right hand. In the mirror, the reflection raised her right hand. I was wearing my gray hoodie. She was wearing a bright blue sweater. I let out a choked gasp. This wasn't a lag. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a window. The reflection, the girl in the blue sweater, saw my realization. She pressed her hands flat against the glass, her expression desperate. She started mouthing words. Slowly, I read her lips. "R-U-N." "What?" I whispered. She shook her head, frantic. She pointed, not at me, at the doorway behind me. A shadow fell across the threshold. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights suddenly stopped, plunging the room into a dead, humming silence. I turned, my entire body rigid. Mr. Harrison was standing in the doorway. His smile was gone. His face was perfectly, unnaturally blank. His light blue eyes looked flat, like polished stones. "Anna," he said. His voice was different, not smooth. It was dry, like static. "I was wondering where you'd gone." "You," I stammered, backing away until my hips hit the sink. "You said, my sweater." "I dislike this mirror," he said, taking a step into the room. The door hissed shut behind him. It's old. It remembers. It confuses things. I looked back at the mirror. The girl in blue was banging on the glass, her mouth open in a silent scream. "What are you?" I whispered. Mr. Harrison looked at my reflection. He sighed. She was always the difficult one. He walked towards me. I flattened myself against the wall. "You're not real," I said, my voice trembling. "That's not... you're..." "On the contrary, Anna," he said, stopping right in front of me. I could smell that same metallic, rusty scent from the air, but it was coming from him. "I'm the only real thing in this place. You're just... confused." He didn't look at me. He looked past me, at the frantic girl trapped in the glass. "She keeps trying to warn you," he said, almost sadly. "She doesn't understand. You're the replacement. She's the original." He raised his hand. "No!" I screamed. He didn't touch me. He placed his hand flat on the mirror, covering the screaming face of my reflection. The glass didn't break. It rippled, like black water. The image of the girl in the blue sweater distorted, smeared, and then, with a sound like a deep sigh, she was gone. I was alone. I stared at the mirror. It was just a mirror now. My reflection stared back at me, pale, terrified, wearing a gray hoodie. It moved when I moved. It mimicked my horror perfectly. There was no lag. There was no one else. Mr. Harrison smiled. It was his normal, charismatic smile again. "There," he said, his voice warm. "All fixed. No more confusion." He put a hand on my shoulder, firm and proprietary. "Let's get you back to class," he said, guiding me toward the door. "We have so much history to catch up on." I looked one last time at the mirror. My own eyes stared back, empty. My reflection did exactly as I did. It was perfect. And it was wrong. Subscribe for more chilling tales.